also this is now our roadmap. So we've got 2025 out of the way. We're as close as we can be with 385. We need to make sure this is ready for the community, and even not just the base, but also the previews are rock solid, even in the previous stage. We don't want to, there are no half measures. We're not throwing out something that's just going to break. Let's have to do another fix. It's not going to happen.
Right. I mean, from my perspective, like I want to make sure that the content builder works the way we expect it to work on day one, and people don't run into trouble with it. People have had enough trouble with the previous content builder iteration, which I was always very disappointed where it ended up. I kind of went hands off with it for a long time, and it kind of just rotted and like was a death by a million cuts of just bad decisions and problems that led to it being as bad as it was, which even I, using it, on some infrequent basis to, dealing with console ports, would run into things that the builder tool would do and be baffled by what it was doing. It was definitely, a lot of, and I've talked about it before. I think we depended too much on new fancy features that were not reliable, and I think it cost us, caused a lot of problems. So this new approach is fantastic. It gets rid of a lot of those issues, and I think it's a pretty fresh way to approach the problem. And we just want to make sure that it's rock solid, that it's a one-click, you build, the content builds, it's done, no weird errors, no mystery, could not resolve NuGet dependency bullshit that we've seen at other times. If you mess with MonoGame enough, you run into that stuff.
But I'll also say, Tom, as well, meaningful errors. So when things do go wrong, you get a meaningful reason to find out what the hell is going wrong.
Yeah.
Not some random DLL, error code 43, and you're like, what?
Yeah. That's critical. And some of it is hard for us to control because we cannot fix the entire .NET ecosystem. But we want to try to soften it as much as we can so that if something does go wrong, it gives you something actionable to address it with. So to us, continuing the content builder improvements, that's a key thing as we move forward. But this first release, we want to make sure is as stable as possible so that, and again, it's still in preview, so we don't expect that it's final, but we want to make the first experience somebody has with it, solid, as so far as that we're trying it. We're testing the builder and the latest templates and everything on brand new laptops that have not had MonoGame installed before, just so that we can verify that this thing works everywhere without any problems. It probably won't mean that somebody won't run into an issue, but we're hoping that the issue is apparent and easy to fix. So that's a key thing for us, not just for the future MonoGame, but also just to for that fourth point of just improving the user experience, just having a better user experience that, makes that not feel unfun. So yeah, that's a key part to it.
Yeah, and we've already started a lot of this work, but that work is sort of in holding because we need to get 385 out in its current state without adding any other complexity. Once 385 hits, we've got several PRs which have already been worked on, ready to smash into it. One of these, Harry's done a shed ton of work to actually remove all the warnings or the concerns. If you build MonoGame from source today, there are a few thousand warnings that put it there, and Harry's gone through and cleared out a lot of them, especially related to the content builder.
Yeah, that's really it's nice for people that are building from source. It's annoying that those warnings were there. A lot of them were just there because newer versions of .NET started spitting out more warnings on certain things, not necessarily things that were actually bugs, but things that were because the standards kind of changed over the years. So that PR that cleans up those warnings is great. It makes it easier to spot actual problems. But we don't want to touch that until 385 is out the door.
Yeah, and there's some refactoring work and things on. So just quality of life improvements of case of, well, this was the first hitch, but we've learned things since then, but we don't want to break even what people are currently using now. Not that any of these changes realistically will change the end user experience, but it adds uncertainty. So we're holding up on those until that's out. The end of the day is you want a process where you've now got effectively a console program that will build your content and spit out all the XMBs or copy the content into the folder ready to be picked up by your game. No fuss, no mess. it runs on its own and can even be run through automation without any issues. There's no .NET dependency issues. Everything's in one place. It just works. And this leads sort of like to the second one, which is there are features in there, but we're not really talking about opening them. Is that there is no actual content builder server built into the framework, and it's been improved on. The intention being here is that if you're working in a team of developers on the same project, there is one asset server in the back end that's constantly building and running the content. When your game runs, it doesn't get it from your local machine. It actually gets it from the server as you're running. Granted, this is focused 100% as the development life cycle. We do not expect runtime games to use this because, in fairness, a lot of platforms wouldn't accept it anyway. No doubt someone will try. We can probably say with good certainty it won't work. Well, this is to speed up the development pipeline. So an artist can go away, working on the content. They simply commit the work in. The built server will rebuild it on the fly, and then the next time some QA person or developer using it, they get the fresh asset. There's no lot of going on. And even as a single developer, this is going to help accelerate your workflow because we all work on multiple screens. I go and change some art, save it. I don't need to then reload the game, get back to the point where I was. I'm actually in the screen where that content is. It reloads. I can see the effect as I'm working. So this will help to further accelerate the development workflow. And again, community's help and feedback on this is going to be critical because it is a fantastic new achievement, but we're going to expect the way teething troubles in the beginning, but in the end, improving the overall experience of your building the MonoGame and things that arguably you don't really see with other platforms and other engines and things like that, which improving your testing cycle, improving your development cycle, improving your shipping cycle to ensure that building a game from start to finish and getting out the door, getting updates built and finished, tested reliably, and ensuring that all of the tools, all of the content, all the facilities are all completely automatable, have meaningful errors and things like that, so that through automation you can identify problems as soon as possible. Because everyone knows when you're building these things, you build unit tests, you can build content tests now, and so it just improves the overall quality of it. And this is a big feature or focus for 2026 now, is that we're wholly focused now that we're getting to a good, much more stable base with new features. That end user experience from onboarding, from getting someone in, getting their project set up, and then managing it, maintaining and building content and shipping it, we want to improve that whole scale. And again, we welcome your feedback to that. And one of the other things, Tom, I think you wanted to speak about was the kind of vision, not committing to anything, but the vision we have around trying to also improve the whole graphical and the effects system in the back end.
Yeah, I mean, this has been something that I've been wanting to address for a while as we're finishing up getting the console platforms updated to the new native backend. So we have a unified backend there. The next step is to kind of re-look at our effect system and try to make things smoother. Like currently, anybody that's working with the effect system now knows that basically there are these hacks you have to do depending on what platform you're building for. If you're building for GL, you have to use the old style, text 2D kind of sampling method where you pass in a texture name, to sample from, or a texture object to sample from using text 2D command. Whereas the newfangled way to do it, which you use with the DirectX 11 backend and with the console backends, is to pass a sampler and then do sampler.sample and then pass to the texture name. And so you have a different way that you formulate, samplers and textures and sampling textures. So that has always been a real pain. There's also dumb things like that we adopted from the original XNA, which XNA adopted from, DirectX and the effects system there, which is for an effect object, you would have like a technique, and then inside the technique, you would have passes, and inside the pass, you would define the shader, the vertex shader and the pixel shader, potentially one or the other or both. And in that, you'd have to define, well, how do you want to compile the shader? What is the shader model you're compiling for? Well, that's an old school way of thinking to begin with. There used to be a thought that there was some benefit back in the shader model 3 days there was some benefits. Say, well, if I compile this for shader model 1, it can be more optimized than if you compile it for shader model 3. And that used to be true back then. It's not true anymore. All that really doesn't change how efficient your shaders are. It doesn't do anything. It's basically a waste of time to be messing with it. The only thing that is beneficial is for the system to be able to ensure a minimum, compatibility, so that it doesn't target the highest level, so that old hardware does not work. And we have to. I think there's a better way for us to address that than addressing it by having a developer explicitly have to specify a shader model, especially, on consoles, where on consoles there's not, different shader models. There's one shader model for that platform, and that's that. So, and for each of those, we're having to specify a shader model. It's all kind of artificial. So I want to clean that up where you don't have to mess with that anymore. That we want to pull that internal, and you just say, here are the two shaders I want to use here. This shader, the effect system will figure out on its own what the best thing is based upon how you're compiling that. If you're compiling it for one platform versus another. So that's a pretty big refactor, just that. And then on top of that, we do want to start adding the other shader stages, like a geometry shader stage, and eventually compute. But to do that, we really have to step back, look at the effect system, and rework some of the core elements of it. We need to get rid of the way that we currently cross-compile from HLSL to GLSL. Originally, old people that have been around MonoGame for a while remember that originally MonoGame only supported GLSL for shaders. And then when we added DX11, we then supported both. You could either have a GLSL shader that's only for GL platforms, and you had an HLSL shader that was only for DirectX 11 platforms. Then at a certain point, we transitioned where you only write HLSL, and we cross-compile to generate GLSL, which was a good step forward. At least you didn't have to write your shaders twice if you target two platforms. But the next step is, making the differences that you would have to have depending on what platform you're targeting kind of go away. So that's a big push to do that, and then add the additional shader stages. If we can produce that, I think we'll have a better shader environment moving forward. It'll also mean that, for using shaders or sharing shaders between different developers when you're targeting different platforms will be easier. So I think that's a big part of moving things forward graphically for us into the future.
Yeah, and hopefully this is sort of evident from the way we're taking this forward now in 2026, that the investments and the donations and the support we get from MonoGame, we're doubling down or trebling down in some cases to address those critical things, to move the platform forward, and arguably make MonoGame just better than it ever was before. And now that we've got to a good stable base where we are, we can start to do that, especially with the addition of the new native platforms, to make access to all the native systems that much easier and a lot more performant. And I think you also did some work on. We were looking at video encoding or something with the native platform, Tom, and how the native platform is improving that access.
Oh, you mean video encoding? Oh, you mean basically just video playback?
Yeah, that was a video playback.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the native platform, there is a video player that's in there that is not fully implemented. And I guess we didn't really capture this in the roadmap, but it's one of those things that we need to address. And this kind of came up the other day because we noted that the compatibility layer that Steam has to run Windows games on Linux boxes or on Steam Deck had a fix in it for MonoGame titles in particular because of how they handled video. Basically, for a long time, we've used platform-specific videos for, platform-specific video engines in order to play videos on platforms. So, like on Windows, we would use the Windows Media Player backend. There's two different acronyms, like WMS and WHS or something like that. I don't remember the two. But there's two different systems, but basically they're the same thing. They're the built-in video playback engine that's in Windows. And on Windows, we would target that. But then if you were targeting, Mac or Linux, we'd use whatever was available there, which sometimes I think some of those might not even be implemented, and some of them might, like on iOS, we use iOS's system for doing that. But those systems are very limiting. They only, their only support is for playing one full screen video, and that's it. and it's kind of controlled through a media playback system. There's a lot of limitations there with that. And that approach just doesn't really scale. Like every platform has a different video player. They all have their own quirks. It makes it hard to work with. So the native API for the new video system works in a slightly different way. It basically, the new video system has like the concept of a video decoder, and the video decoder can also return an audio decoder for the audio stream on the video. The video decoder is very simple. We just say, hey, video decoder, is there a new frame? Play the video. Hey, is there a new frame? There is. Give me the texture for that frame, and that's it. It's as simple as that. The audio decoder does the same thing that it does for song currently. It just returns chunks of data. You ask it for a new chunk of data, it gives you a new chunk of data, and you start playing it back. So implementing the video decoder, we're looking at implementing a couple different formats just for flexibility's sake. But the truth is we don't want to implement a ton of formats. We just want to implement the ones that are most critical to us. One is we're looking at this codec called David, which has been around for a while. I think it's part of the VLC system. I think it was done by the VLC team, or it's used by VLC. But it's the current kind of top end open source video decoding or video encoder or video encoding codec, and implementing that, I think, will give us good, high quality, up to 4K video that can run on a CPU and not kill it, and we think that's the right thing to implement for MonoGame to begin with. And because it's an open source thing with full source, we can technically recompile that library to every platform, so we can support the same decoder across multiple platforms and have it just work. So that's the approach we're taking there. And then we're going to also implement some other ones. I want to try to avoid, implementing not Vorbis, I guess Theora. Yes, Theora is the video decoder. I want to avoid implementing that. I've tried using that on a particular project, and that thing, it works, but it's really not. It was never designed for modern videos at high resolutions. It struggles with anything higher than 1080p, and it struggles even more if you're trying to decode more than one video at once, which I had to do on a project. So we're probably not going to touch that, but we might look at some other ones, because somebody had suggested another video codec that we could try to use. But we don't want to go too far with it. We want to just have at least one good video system that works on all platforms, and eventually we can expose more in the system so that you could use videos in more interesting ways. Instead of just saying, hey, play this full screen video, you could potentially use it as a texture on a surface. So we want to do more of that kind of thing moving forward, but that's another initiative within the foundation to get the video player done.
I mean, it's fair to say, Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we don't plan to build these things as a closed system. They're going to be open, there'll be interfaces. So if someone wants to build their own and extend into the native system through their API, we're not going to, we're open source first. If you want to do it your own way, again, because it's MonoGame, there's no controls, no bounds, other than the case of you break it, you fix it. Okay, so as you can see, we've been talking about this a lot. Actually, we've been talking about this a lot for the last few months about what comes next and what goes forward. So if you've got any feedback or comments out this, or if there is something you think oh my goodness, how could you have missed this? Put it in the feedback channel on Discord, the Discord discussion, or the community site when we eventually get that back up and running. We'll no doubt have a big channel there for thoughts and ideas, and the most votes wins. we are driven by our community for the most part. To that, guys, turn ourselves to the sponsors themselves. The MonoGame, the mobile tutorial is imminent. We hit some minor issues with running on some of the platforms and different landscapes and things like that. So we're making sure, again, that's ironclad, locked down. It's a much smaller tutorial because it's really focused, very, very focused on just how do you think about resolutions in the game, how do you handle about mobile input, and then shipping it onto iOS and Android platforms. I said with the Steamworks one, we might extend that tranche to actually then look at other platforms. And what actually came out just this last week is that with the 3D tutorial there is there in, I've got a huge, massive task to review it. And the current view is that, well, rather than wait for the entire thing to be done, we'll probably do this as an episodic show. So as and when we get chapters in, reviewed, and done to a quality level that we agree on, then we'll publish those chapters and get feedback from the sponsors to that content and get it in there and go through the whole choice of that. And that's not to say, we will need to go back and correct something early on. One of the things I always hit on with these tutorials is that you'll get to around chapter 10 and think, well, it hasn't explained this concept enough. So then you need to backtrack and go, right, well, this should fit here in this tutorial to say this is when I should have explained this and what I'm doing. So we keep all these things in mind. So bear in mind, as these are being released, they're still subject to change until the entire thing's finished. And getting then sponsors be able to feedback and put content and suggestions on how to improve it. And then once it gets to the public eyes again, the same door is open. So these are not static things. We don't build content to ship out the door and then wash our hands with it. The beginner 2D tutorial that we had so much investment on and has accelerated and made so many people happy about building with MonoGame again now, that's had lots of changes and feedback and tweaks and things. Whether someone's actually saying, well, there was a typo in the screen, there's a PR they've contributed towards that tutorial. We've had some slight changes to things in case of, well, you didn't close this off here, and stuff that we missed during the review or the developer missed when they're actually building it. But again, this is where the MonoGame community really shines. I don't see this on any other platform where everyone is involved and invested in helping everybody grow and build the best games they have. And this is how MonoGame works. We're community focused. We're building things forward, and the sponsors' roadmap will go further on beyond this. So the new bounties will hit there first. We'll probably look at some other additional surprise assets and other features that will drop onto sponsors so they get early access and help them grow. So if you're in there sponsoring MonoGame, then we will reward you back. And I just remember we haven't actually got anything. We've not done anything with the store, or we've not even featured the store at all. But the store exists. We probably should think about doing something with that. With the new year.
Which store are you talking about?
Our actual MonoGame store.
Oh, the merch store stuff.
Yeah, the merch store.
Okay. Yeah, we don't feature that too much. It's actually buried in the bottom of the website header, right, or the footer.
Yeah,
is where the store is actually linked. So it's not super accessible. That said, we're not about just selling T-shirts, so it's not super important, but it is there.
Yeah, and again, we're open to feedback. Anything that people would want to see. If they want to see a 3D printed MonoGame logo, we can probably organize that. Or other merch. I think one of the fun things I've seen is where people that get physical, you get the collector's edition MonoGame where you get this character that's actually out of a game that's been sponsored.
Yeah, my feeling with all that stuff usually is that I'd rather spend the time on the code than that stuff, than the tchotchkes.
Yeah, well, that's it. We're all about the code, get the content, get the tutorials, but it's another way for people to contribute if they want to buy merch, and other way to fund it. But obviously, that again requires an investment from MonoGame to go, right, well, we need to start creating that content to do it. So it has to be a breaking point of where it's going to be financially viable of, if we build this thing, is enough people going to want to buy it? Because then it's worth the investment. Else, we could have spent that money on code.
Right.
Kelson actually in the Open Hours chat room is actually saying that they've got a 3D printed MonoGame logo.
Awesome.
But I'm going to challenge you and say, sorry, no picture, no doesn't count. You have to see it.
Yep, got to see that on Discord or the new community site.
If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and tap the bell for YouTube notifications. Comment below to let us know what you'd like to see more of. Support us at monogame.net/donate or get in touch via social media.